Hey guys, Dr. Ken Nordberg. See you again. Back another fireside whitetail hunting seminar. It's kind of an interesting one. 6 days from now, the archery season opens here in Minnesota. Back in 1960, this was a pretty serious time for me. I loved archery hunting. And those were the days when nobody knew about sitting in trees. That was something new. In fact, that was about the time I decided to try sitting in trees and putting primitive platforms, cutting tree branches, stout branches, nailing them between boughs in the tree and sitting on that with my feet hanging over the edge, sitting at an angle with my bow, my bare bow recurve. And it just, man, did that stack, you know. No sights whatsoever, no rest for the arrow. It was all instinctive shooting, and you had to do a lot of shooting to be good at it. That was back in the days when belonging to an archery club was really important. Well, it's kind of an interesting time to be hunting too, you know. Just 2 weeks ago, antlered bucks shed velvet. And when they shed velvet, it's like they're getting out of jail. Might not be so true, where it might seem like it isn't so true in farm areas, where bucks will bed in timber adjacent to fields of corn or soybeans or alfalfa, pastures. And you see them a lot during the day. They're out in these open fields or anything. But in forest areas, they don't move around much during that period, and especially like where I hunt, because wolves hunt whitetails year-round where I hunt. In the summer, it isn't packs. The packs don't form till about November 8th. It's like wolves have a calendar, so oh, it's the 8th. It's time to make a pack, put together a pack. But so it's single wolves. They don't even hunt in pairs all summer long. One of the pair, the alpha male or alpha female, will stay with the cubs in the vicinity of their den during the summer months, while the other wolf is out hunting for food. The other one brings food back to the den for all of them. Then the male goes off, things like that. Well, anyway, that's when they shed velvet, that's a really important time for mature bucks. Well, all bucks that have antlers, including yearlings. And at this time, they're free to move around their entire home range. While yearling buck home ranges are not very large, they're only about anywhere from 90 to 200, 250 acres in some cases, depending on the numbers of deer living in the square mile. But they live in their mother's ranges throughout their yearling year, the smaller ranges. But the other deer, 2-year-old bucks, this is the first year that they have their own ranges. And they're 2.5-year-old bucks in the fall. They have ranges about half square mile in size. But at this point now, the 2.5-year-olds, they're starting to do things like older bucks. And they pretty much stick close to their bedding areas all summer long. They're hidden places. Off the beaten path. You don't see a lot of deer trails where their bedding areas are. You don't see, and it's heavy cover, thick cover, and usually adjacent to a good escape area if they need it, like a cedar swamp or elder swamp or a spruce bog, places like that. They hate to use them though, because when they have to run fast, like when they're being pursued by a wolf, they're liable to rip or tear or injure the velvet on their developing antlers. And when that happens, that antler is not going to grow properly. And when you got antlers that are not grown properly, they're at a disadvantage when they're battling with other bucks to attain the highest spot possible in their local square mile home range. The range owned by the big dominant bean buck. They're all living in that square mile area. some older bucks will have 2 square mile areas, but that takes a pretty exceptional buck to claim an area that large and hold it and keep it exclusive for their own breeding while the breeding phase of the rut is in progress. It's a pretty special buck. And one of those kind of bucks is on the wall. It was taken by my oldest daughter a number of years ago. But anyway, so this is a special time of year for them. Now they're out of jail. The bail is all gone, and they can explore the entire extent of their home ranges. The 2.5-year-old bucks, they probably don't even know the extent of it yet. They're just still working on deciding, this is where I want to live. And in some cases, they probably won't get what they want because that big dominant buck, or even other bolder bucks, that 3.5-year-old, 4.5-year-old bucks that are not dominant, will have a lot to say about how large that 2.5-year-old buck's range is going to be. Moreover, that 2.5-year-old buck wasn't born on this range. He wasn't born in this square mile. When a yearling buck spends his yearling year with his mother, and then here in Minnesota about Christmas, a little bit, maybe a day or two before Christmas, all of our deer head to a special wintering area. And they spend 6-7 months in wintering areas, depending how long the snow lasts in the spring. Well, when they leave that wintering area, whether they're discouraged by their own mothers or it's just a genetic thing that they want to do, the 2-year-old bucks want to establish their own first home ranges. So they head back to an area, and usually when they're looking for their own, the other older bucks that live in the area will chase them out of it. You can't be here, the mother doesn't want them, these other bucks don't want them, there's no room for you here. You've got to go find it somewhere else. And those 2-year-olds can travel quite a ways before they finally find a place that is open to them. So, oh boy, here's a perfect spot, you know. It's about a 1/2 square mile in size, and nobody's claiming that somebody, maybe that deer was eaten by wolves during the previous winter, or maybe it was shot by a hunter. But here's an open spot, and they'll grab it. And they'll do their best to hold on to it if any other buck comes along looking for that range. So it's an important time for a buck when he's a 2-year-old. Well, so when you find 2.5-year-old bucks in your hunting area, they're from somewhere else. These guys are new in the game here. And not only that, you know, their education when it comes to avoiding hunters, identifying them and avoiding hunters, isn't complete. You know, as a yearling, they're still kind of dumb about these things. You know, they depend on their mothers for direction and leadership. So here's a 2.5-year-old in a new place, all new deer, new bucks around there. Well, he already knows. You know, I'm gonna get to be as big a guy as I can be in this local buck pecking order here, and so he's anxious to use his new antlers now. He got his new 6-8 pointers, and I'm anxious to fight other bucks in this area. And so when they're out there exploring, they're finding a place where maybe the dominant buck is maybe the leader when it comes to selecting a spot where they want to feed. And this dominant buck might say, well, I like this area. I always like this area here. There's lots of good grass here, and the sun gets to the ground. Lots of grasses. There's even clover, you know, that red stuff growing around here. All kinds of plants that they like to eat. And it says, this is where I want to eat this summer. You know, it might be a short distance from its bedding area. It might be way on the other side of that square mile area where it will want to eat. But once this dominant buck starts going there in the spring, and he started feeding there pretty regular by this time, even, you know, here it is, the 8th of September. By this time he says, this is where I want to feed. All the other bucks that grow, antlered bucks, including the yearlings, will find them, because they're out exploring too, and they'll find, whoa, here's where we're going to feed, and this is where we're going to do our battling, our sparring and battling, to decide who is going to be the dominant breeding buck this year in this square mile area. So what that means is twice a day there's going to be a bunch of bucks here, including the yearlings. They could be 6, 7 bucks that come to feed here every morning and every afternoon. And when they get there, first thing they want to do is eat. They're hungry. You know, it's time to eat now. And you know, they don't. This takes them a while to feed. You know, eat their fill. Many hours actually, and they're going along eating little bunches at a time, taking their time. Then late in that feeding cycle, I've watched them do this many times. It seems almost like an accident. You know, 2 bucks will be close together and they'll be feeding, and one will bump the antlers of another buck with his own antler, you know, click. And that's a challenge. Anytime 2 bucks bump antlers or push against another buck's antlers, that's a challenge to do battle. Now, this time of the year, that challenge doesn't last long. It might be 10 seconds only. Click, 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 click. You know, I'm going to eat some more. It's not real serious in the beginning. They'll click antlers together a little bit and then continue feeding. And then 2 more come together. And it seems like every time I watch bucks in an area where they're feeding, the yearlings are always most anxious. They want to fight everybody. It must be a genetic thing. Or maybe it's a genetic thing for dominant breeding bucks to be very aggressive toward fighting with other deer. But boy, they'll take on anybody. Here's this great big guy here, this big 12-pointer with great big diameters where his antlers are attached to his skull. And you know, you can tell right up, boy, that buck, he probably, up where we hunt, that buck will probably weigh 300 pounds, a little more. He's a huge animal. And he's got this huge, little yearlings will go right up to little forkies or even spikes, and clean want to fight that. They'll charge that buck and he'll just polish them off, just and they're done for. And they'll say, well, I think I'll go fight that big deer over there instead. But this kind of thing that's happening there. So, that has a lot to do where you should be hunting when you're an archery hunter in September. We'll get back to that in a minute. This is my big introduction to this subject. Before I go on though, I want to remind you to be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You know, press that red button right down. And I appreciate it very much too if you would also poke that thumbs up button there. Be sure to do that. I appreciate it. You know, when you're on there, you'll get a notice every time I add a new YouTube presentation. And there's going to be a lot of them. Oh, between now and next February, there are all kinds of subjects that we're going to be covering. And I try to make them timely, like, you know, we're going to talk about archery season. You guys that are gun hunters, you might not be interested in this, but, you know, when we get to the opening, like here in Minnesota, our firearm hunting season begins this year. It's a little later than normal. It begins on the 9th of November, a week later than usual. And by that time, breeding will be gone. In normal years, a lot of times our season opens early, like the 3rd, and the 3rd is the first day, our first breeding phase of the rut. There's 3 of them, you know. For example, in November, our breeding begins. We're in my study area near the Canadian border on the 3rd. Normally on the 3rd. Doesn't mean every doe in the place is in heat at that time. It might be only 1 or 2 in a square mile area, and maybe none. Maybe in this particular square mile, the first doe in this area that's going to be in estrus or, you know, anxious to breed, it might be on 1 or 2 lays later. on any one day during that 2-week period, starting on the 3rd, only about 10 to 12% of does are in estrus or in heat on any one day. It means only 1 or 2 does will be in estrus, and there are going to be days when there aren't any. It's not a carnival-like event like you get the idea, gee, there's does running all over that are in heat and the bucks are running all over. It isn't that way at all. It's a pretty quiet time. And one of the ways you know that breeding has started at that point is all of a sudden bucks aren't renewing ground scrapes. Well, there are 2 reasons. A lot of those ground scrapes that were made early, and usually about the middle of October in Minnesota, when we start getting freezing temperatures at night, you get down below 32 degrees, then it starts the frenzy of making ground scrapes and antler rubs normally. We've had a lot of unusually warm Octobers and Novembers in the past dozen years or so, and unusually warm temperatures can shut that down. The big bucks just don't want to be making a lot of ground scrapes and antler rubs at that time. But at any rate, when breeding begins, most of those, if not all of those lesser bucks, including yearlings, have been chased off range by that big buck. And he's forever trying to keep them off range. He's going to be cruising his breeding range, which is his home range, a lot, day and night, middle of the day, middle of the night, looking for those other bucks. Any that dare to return, he's going to run them off. He'll kill them even if he has to. Sometimes that happens. But as this period of battling goes on, and we get closer to mid-October, these battles get more and more serious, become more and more serious. But for you guys that are archery hunters, you should be getting the idea right now that the best place to hunt big bucks during the last half of September are these special feeding areas where all the bucks come together twice daily to battle or spar or battle. And so what you're looking for if you're scouting like now, yeah, you might get some nice pictures of big bucks on your trail cams. Oh boy, this looks like a good spot. But if it isn't that feeding area where you got the picture, where are the bucks going to be each day that you're out there? If this is where you're going to hunt, they're going to spend very little time going through this area, if at all. It can change from day to day, depending on wind direction and whether they found you there or not, and they're now avoiding it, things like that. So probably your best chance of getting big buck is not going to be on a trail of any kind, except those that are adjacent to feeding areas. Well, how do you know if this is a feeding area of big bucks? Well, you get out there, you see an area that's sort of open, doesn't have to be completely open, or it might be a good stand of oaks, any kind of oak, red oaks, white oak acorns are considered the most desirable and most nutritious acorns eaten by whitetails. But boy, they'll settle for little black acorns. They'll settle like down South Carolina, or red oak acorns, which are small, like we find up in my hunting area. We have these scrubby red oaks up there, which retain their leaves all winter. But anyway, you look for places where whitetails are going to be feeding on your opening day. And where are they going to be feeding? Well, where they come together to battle, whatever the food is that they're looking for there. And the way you recognize this area, you can go out there midday and walk around. Gee, this looks like a feeding area. It's got all these foods, and let's start looking for tracks and droppings. You're not going to find antler rubs and ground scrape, no fresh ones there yet. You might find antler rubs that were actually velvet rubs that were made around the 1st September. And most of them are on smaller diameter trees, because when they're trying to scrape that velvet up, they got to get in between the tines, you know, right down close to the main beams and places like that, around the bases of their antlers. And a big tree trunk just doesn't work very well for that. And it might be a clump, a woody clump. And you'll find them all kinds of smaller diameter trunks, woody trunks in there that have been, where the bark has been rubbed off. And some of those might be broken, you know. When they're working on it, sometimes they'll just get their antlers in there, sweep them back and forth through a woody shrub and bust some branches. They might instead walk over these deep grasses and do that, trying to wipe off more and more of that velvet tatters that are hanging on their antlers. And you've probably seen a photo or two of buck that was in the process of doing that in one of my previous YouTube presentations. But anyway, you might find those, but those are bedding areas, usually, or they're very close to them. And those are special places. And I'm telling you, you can hunt those, but if that buck discovers you there before you have a chance to take that buck, that's the end of it, that spot as far as the hunting area. For the season, it's just, once you ruin the safety that whitetail, that buck feels when he beds there, nothing ever finds him in beds there, he's gone. So, if you find a spot like that and hunt it, you got to be downwind or crosswind, along maybe a trail entering, coursing into that area. You don't want to be downwind because the bucks always approach those bedding areas from downwind, and you're a sitting duck there. And you don't want to be in the upwind, of course, because your scent's going to sweep through that area, and the buck is going to smell your airborne scent. So you got to be crosswind. And maybe, you know, you might be a little bit further away than you'd like to be, because with the pole, you'll have a better chance for close range shots at these buck feeding areas during the last half of September. Much better. And if you do things right, maybe you can hunt there 2 or 3 days before one of those bucks discovers you, and that's the end of it. That doesn't mean they're going to all clear out. No, well, if you're a stand hunter, they aren't going to leave the area. They're just going to stop coming to that one feeding area. Whether it's a place where there's a lot of acorns on the ground, or lots of grasses that they like to eat, or maybe clover, or the clover you planted, or the turnips you planted. Doesn't matter. It's going to be the same thing is going to happen. It is darn hard to hunt one place more than 2 days without the buck you want to take there discover you and begin to avoid the area. There's nobody that good. You think whitetails are helpless. They find these turnips and oh man, they want them so much. They're going to come there no matter what. Not big bucks. These guys have run on too long. They know what to look for. They know when they see something that's dangerous. They know how to find you in a tree stand. And once they do, every day they might walk by on the downwind side, whichever direction the wind is coming from, to see if you're still there. Oh yeah, you're still there. I smell them there. Your trail scent has been getting stronger and stronger every time you go in there. And each time you put it down, it lasts 4 days. Sometimes a little longer. If you keep going back and forth on that trail, that's going to last 4 days after the last time you use it. But meanwhile, you've added more to it. It's getting stronger and stronger. And I don't know how much of that trail scent becomes airborne. But I would imagine a significant amount does. And finally, all they have to do is smell the trail you've been using over and over again from downwind and know, oh, that's fresh. He's here. And once they find you, oh, that's great. I can go anywhere else in my range and not have to worry about him anymore or her, because that's where they're going to be all day. That's what stand hunters do. That kind of hunter waits in ambush. They're not pursuers. They don't try to stalk you. They just sit in the tree, and so nothing to worry about there. So if you're going to be hunting a feeding area, you got to make sure you really good cover, so your silhouette is not obvious. I mean, you can be 16, 19 feet. Boy, some of these tree stands now with ladders are made for really extreme heights. If you're way up there in that tree stand and your silhouette is obvious against the sky, he's going to get you every time because they're always looking. And look at that big dark thing up there against the sky. In the morning, the sun's coming out, the sky's getting bright. You're going to look black up there. That black silhouette is big. The only other thing that could be big like that is in a tree, but black bears just don't go up in trees, just sit up there like that. That's a human. And it's waiting for me. And I'm not going to get close to that human. So, then, of course, if you want to sit there all season, that's your business. And finally decide, well, I think I'll take a yearling or a fawn. Here comes a fawn. Bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. You'll be thinking, I think I'll take this one. Or you're sitting there in your ground level blind, you know, the one's all camouflage. It doesn't look like the area around you. It's really different and straight angles. And, you know, a yearling might come along and be wondering, what in the world is that? But it doesn't see anything moving. Well, you come a little closer and look at it, and look at it, and get a little closer. That's a yearling problem. Yearlings do that all the time. What is that? And finally, all of a sudden, the arrow shoots out of there. But big buck, oh no, that's an ambush site. Humans, those straight edges like that doesn't look at all like all the stuff around it. No, I'm not going to. And smell that, all the scent coming from there. Holy cow, there's a human there. That's in that thing. That's really fresh smell. But anyway, so if you want to keep sitting in one place, if you keep making your food plot bigger and bigger, you're not helping yourself much. You'd be better off having 2 or 3 of them, small ones, just maybe 10 by 10, small food plot. You'll do much better if you do that. And then change stand sites every 2-3 days. If it was my boys and I, we change stand sites every half day. We don't want to mess around, wasting time, valuable hunting time, thinking that, well, we didn't see the buck. We've been here half a day and we didn't see him. Usually, the way we're thinking is he already knows we're here. So it'd be senseless to waste any more time here. We're going to go to a new stand site this afternoon or tomorrow morning. That kind of, we do that every day when we hunt. Did that when we were bow hunters. Okay, so back to what you should do. So now, the place, what you're looking for, nothing else counts. It's very fresh tracks, and if you want a big buck, you want those tracks to be, the hoof length only to be 3.5 to 4 inches in length. 4 inches is a big buck. You get that one, he's Pope young. Really. It'd be really unusual. He only has to score 145 points. That one with 4-inch tracks, he's Pope young. That's the buck to get. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries, my website bookstore, and much more.